right, folks, welcome to another Comic Talk. I am Pops. We're going to talk comic books, of course, and with me, the great guest. He's back again. That's right. WAKIZASHI'S Teahouse. It's Gray. How are you, my brother? Across the world, here we are talking comic books again.
I know, it's great to be back, Pops. It's early morning for you, it's late in the evening for me, and yeah, just coming back and talking comics has got me excited. I've been looking forward to this all day.
That's awesome. So yeah, I really have been thinking a lot about our time, being able to figure out how to talk about good stuff. Most of my Comic Talk time is spent trying to highlight things, whether they be old or new, that people can actually at least try to find some fun and enjoyment. And I give you credit. I think I've tagged you in almost every video, and if I miss one, I'd go back and put it. That this is the guy that got me to at least give Spawnverse a chance. That's what I refer to it as. I don't even know if that's appropriate or not to call it Spawnverse, but I wouldn't be in King Spawn and Gunslinger, and I didn't really get into the other ones yet. You can only put so much up here, Brain. I can only handle so much before I would have overload. So. And I know I'm so massively behind everyone else. So I'm like, I got to kind of do videos as I kind of go to kind of manage it, even though I'm usually reading ahead of where the videos are. But no, thank you for that. Because, I mean, like you've said, the Brett Booth art, the Fernandez art, McFarlane's storytelling, his influence on Sean Lewis, I think it's just, it really feels so cohesive. And I really enjoyed the callbacks. I feel like that's been lost in the major industry. It's like, when he had Kincaid, he not only shows us an image, he has a reference to Spawn number 5. Like it goes all the way back to the beginning. And I'm like, see, now that's the way you write a comic book. That's the way you do it.
The thing is, Pops, it's maybe part of it's me being, I'm a little bit over enthusiastic sometimes. I try and focus on positives, but I'm having so much fun. That's no lie. I'm just enjoying reading the comics, and it's helped by the great art in each title, as you say. Gunslinger, Brett Booth really stands out. We have Steven Segovia, who's doing the main Spawn title, I think. He's very good. I'm trying to think now. Who's the one who's doing King Spawn? Because it changes, doesn't it? It was...
I'm on I think it's Javi Fernandez is doing them right now.
Yeah,
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how long they last. Like I said, I'm way behind you guys that are closer to real time. So again, for those of you who want to know up to date, make sure you're subscribed. Everything is down below, of course. Make sure you're up to date. This guy, he's a lot more attuned. Like even Batman that I dropped out of. Well, I shouldn't say I dropped out because at this point it's almost like guilty pleasure because it turns so sideways. Like I enjoy Failsafe until the end when he's in space for no reason and survives, and it was so badly. I said, who can defend Batman in space and not Riri Williams or vice versa from Black Panther Wakanda Forever? Because she pulls the exact same stunt, right? She puts on an Iron Man thing, flies out in space, it freezes up. She doesn't have a helmet, so she would die, but we don't address that issue. It's the exact same problem. But here's my issue. I don't know when the video drops or if it already has. I think I dropped it yesterday. Because you are actually ahead of me on 132, but on Batman 131, Batman's just laying there. He's beaten. We're doing the same things we did with New 52. It's like we're making all the same problems they did in DC. It's going to be an alternate universe. We're not going to explain things. We're just going to have random people doing and showing up, creating chaos. You have this man-woman thing with this pseudo mohawk SJW looking thing that just hops in the room out of nowhere to save him. You're like, what the heck, Chip Zdarsky? And then of course you guys have talked about 132, where I guess the backstory of Robin. Oh, by the way, you guys don't forget Robin's flipped. He's completely gay now. He and Bernie are gonna have a love fest over here in our backstory. It's just like I just can't. I'm just what the heck is wrong with you people?
I got quite a bit of criticism for that, Pops, well, as anyone would, but my point was that, okay, if you're going to make Tim bi, then fair enough, but show some development, like write the story. How did we get here? Why has he changed? What's the thing about it? You could do that. You could make it an interesting story if you want to focus on that, but they don't, and they didn't. They just kind of went, okay, Tim's bi now, accept it, and that was it.
I did a whole video on this way back. I said, this is, I called it a gimmick. I said, I'm sorry, you've made sexuality a gimmick. And I said, you have had no conversation about this. There are no scenes that I'm aware of where he's like really struggling. He's not feeling connected to the female of the moment because he had several girlfriends, something.
Yeah.
And
right.
on the out of the blue, he just meets Bernie, and he's gay. It's like just he's like, I'm like, okay, hold on. And the fact that it was sort of like ignored for a few Batman issues, and he seemed like it was just Tim Drake and the Justice League and all of this sort of normal superhero stuff that had ties to, like we talked about, like it tied back to like 2000, I think it was 2006, right? Grant Morrison stuff, where it kind of like continues that concept of Batman having a failsafe. And then out of the blue, it's, oh no, by the way, he is that. Like, what are you doing? Like, again, the New 52 problem, right? The right hand doesn't talk to the left hand. There's no big picture. There's no big plan. There's no scope. Nobody makes sure characters are consistent. So with all of that frustration, Gray, talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've been enjoying. I want to get to the Mike Millar stuff, because you've openly talked about how you hadn't been reading some of that, and now you're kind of diving back in a little bit. Plug a couple of those, because I haven't read those yet, and I think that those may be things that I kind of get to as soon as I can, so that I'm in a lot earlier than I am on some of the Spawn stuff.
Okay, well, I'll talk about some of the more recent stuff, the new stuff, but what got me back in, Pops, was this, and it's King of Spies, Mark Millar, Matteo Scalera. It's great. It's only a 4-issue mini. It's basically old James Bond who's retired, and he comes back, and he's taking out the real bad guys. You know what I mean? The corrupt governments, the conglomerate bosses, the people who mess around with kids, that kind of thing. It's so good. So this pulled me back in. The story, really, really good. Awesome art by Scalera. Is it Scalera? Just one example. You can see, maybe if it focus.
Yeah, let me. I wasn't prepared to make you full screen there, so I'm trying to get to it.
Oh, thank you. Well, look at that. Let's go for the.
Put it back. I finally got to click over. There we go. Yeah. Now we're talking. All right. Very, very good.
So this pulled me back in. Yeah, this is Millar, sorry. Is it Millar anyway? So now I'm reading 2 of his new series. Oh, sorry, 3. There's Nemesis Reloaded, which is kind of a crazy, anti-hero, Moon Knight style vigilante. We've also got Nightclub, which is about teenage vampires. And the premise is, if you got vampire powers, would you go for good or go for evil? You know, which path would you follow? And the third one is the Magic Order, which is basically Harry Potter but for adults. It's really good. All good writing, not just the shock value, Pops. Great art in each one. I mean, he's got who is it? Oh my god, again, I'm getting stream brain, forgetting names. The artist who was on Batman during the failsafe run, he's now doing Nemesis Reloaded. I want to say.
Okay. Well, then I'm totally in, because Jorge Jimenez is amazing. That's it. Oh, I know. Yeah, trust me.
Jimenez.
When you had talked about how good Batman 130 was, and it was the first issue that Zdarsky kind of got back in, it was almost like a restart. And then I opened it, and I saw how he was drawing the Justice League characters, especially Superman. I was like, okay, I'm at least going to try, because Jimenez sold me the book. And the fact that when Failsafe ends and he's not even on the art, he's not the artist anymore, I was like, okay, see, this is another negative. So to know that this is where he ended up, is working with Mark, that's good to know. Does he write all of those titles?
He does. I don't know how he does it. And Jimenez, I'm not sure if he's just doing the miniseries, the Nemesis one. I think it's only going to be 4 or 5 issues. And then maybe he's going back to Batman. But Pops, right now, we've got an artist called Mike Hawthorne doing Batman. And for me, I don't know, maybe because of Jimenez was so good, I've been spoilt by him, but I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling Hawthorne's art. I don't know if you've seen issue 131, 132 yet.
Yeah, I just dropped the video on 131. I've looked at 132. Okay. I not only don't like the art, it's also the colorist and stuff too, back where we're back to Berkeley Art School stuff again, where you got a lot of pastel colors and purples and pinks, and primary colors are like the minority. I'm sorry, folks. Literally, this is the problem. It's like it's an inconsistency. So when we were reading comic books, and we were same time, different across the world, we're both reading Batman comic books as an example, right? And you're reading something that Chuck Dixon's working on, and maybe the artist will be gone for a couple of issues, and then a different artist comes in. They didn't change the complete different art style in between. They had to adapt to how the character was in that situation, the way Batman and detective and everything worked, and it flowed. I feel like in modern comics, we allow these artists to come in, they radically change something, and then when you say you don't like it, you're the problem. I'm like, well, it doesn't look like the character that you left off with. What are you talking about? So okay, so make sure we got them all. So Nemesis, Reloaded. The
Yes,
King of Spies was your gateway drug. Nightclub
that's
and
right.
Magic Order. Okay.
Yes, you got
Okay.
them down. The King of Spies was my probably my number one comic for last year. It came out in
Okay.
2022, so yeah, absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it, and I've not read Millar for years. I don't know if you ever read much of his Hitman series or Kick Ass or Hit Girl, any of those.
Yeah, Hitman in particular, obviously, Batman, uber Batman nerd, right? So I mean, just a
Right.
complete overlap there in the universe. Very early on with Hitman was like, okay, what is this? And I just, again, kind of a light version of Punisher. Like Punisher was just more grouchy and difficult to be around, whereas Hitman almost seemed like the cool guy at the bar. I felt like he had almost like those Wolverine vibes too. Like he'd be kind of cool to hang out with. And the next thing you know, he's just shooting everyone's head off, and you're like, "Holy crap, this is nuts!" But hey, listen, Millarverse doesn't get any of the publicity. So if I need to do a little publicity to throw out some of our Millarverse love, then that's what needs to happen, especially if it's good. So that's another reason I wanted to have a chat with you and catch me up on how to steer towards some of those kinds of things.
What's more interesting as well is one of those titles. Probably this is probably quite famous. He's putting it out for 1.99. That's the Nightclub, the teenage vampire story. Now, to be fair, maybe it's aimed more at a younger audience. That you could say it's YA, but it's still Millar. It's still got his his shock value at times. But not just that. It's a good story. It's a good story, well told. And there's an artist on there. Top of my head, I think it's Juanan Ramirez, who's got a really nice style. I like it.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
I need to have a Millarverse day where I just do some videos going through all my catch up. Because that's the other thing too. I think is a very strategic thing that Millar's doing, and maybe this is what the big two are not getting. Is he seems like he's very interested in. I'm going to write this story. It's a 4-part miniseries, and then I'm going to close that up. There's a graphic novel, maybe there's a trade paperback. Then he's going to come back and revisit it. Whereas it seems like with miniseries with the big two for years, it seems like they're just so forgettable. Where you know what I mean? It just seems like these random things that no one cares about. I can't even keep. You go to the app on the big two, and there's just so much information. I know why I normally would never want to jump in. They don't even know where to jump in. They are literally a slave to whatever those recommendations are, where it'll say like, you want to read this thing, and then that's what they're going to do because they have no context to what they're doing. They've made it so convoluted. Whereas Millar sounds like he's very interested in just creating these little stories that are independent, and then there's like a sequel or a prequel or whatever that may be. So very, very cool. All right, so let me share this that you got pulled up here.
Okay, this is taken from the latest issue of Nemesis Reloaded. Just to give you an idea. So it's Jorge Jimenez's art. Pretty simple, pretty basic, but just his panel breakdowns, pops. You know what I mean? Look at this image at the bottom. That's
Well,
Nemesis.
that's the gold right there. I mean, this is the guy. Look at that. It's just Batman. It is Batman. It looks just exactly like some sort of. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And then and again, when you scroll back up a little bit, just to have such a great contrast from the detail of the emotions of the one character, and then we go to the binoculars. It's like a great cutaway. It's no reason this guy has such a great cinematic mind to tell his stories with how he's communicating to the artist to know this is kind of how I want to do this. And then these artists are they're knocking it out of the park. That's incredible. I love it.
Great. That's good to hear. Yeah. And I can ask you what you think about that. It's interesting that Mark Millar has pulled in some of these big name artists, to work on his new series. So it sounds like he's going for it, isn't it? He's really pulling out all the stops with not just Image Comics. Is it Millar World or Millar World? And I think these are going to be developed for Netflix as well, because he signed some big deal, didn't he, with Netflix, as far as I know.
Yeah, he's had a lot of luck, and I think that one of the things I think he's doing is he is probably okay. If I were Mark Millar, I would be very patient, knowing that Jimenez is on the hook with DC doing Batman or something like that. Hot commodity.
Yeah.
I like it. When can you do it? Here's what we're going to do. By the way, I'm connected to all this Netflix and stuff like that. So the odds are very good that if this is done right, it will get adapted. We can get something done and down the road and that kind of thing, which will be good for you as well. So I think that's a very easy sell to most top-notch artists to at least give it a chance. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, back in the day, you would say like, I didn't read Moon Knight, but when Stephen Platt did Moon Knight, I couldn't miss an issue, right? Because it was just so good, knocks it out of the park. You know what I mean? Then when Stephen Platt left, I was like, I just didn't care anymore. I think I feel this a little bit about the Jorge Jimenez. Jorge left, and now I'm like, I just don't care as much. It's not as engaging. And Millar is tracking down people who want to create engaging art for his stories. I think that's the way to go. This is Nightclub. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah,
that's pretty graphic pretty intense for a YA. I like that.
Yeah, I like it. It's a great scene. This kind of vampire biker gang has just come into it with this issue 3, so very interesting. But Millar's having fun with all the classic rules about vampires, what you can and what you can't do, and he's so clever how he brings those into the modern world, the modern story. Yeah. Okay.
Very good. That's very, very good. Yeah, I haven't really researched what has been optioned recently from him. I have a video I'm getting ready to do about some, because Amazon has been in the game lately, not Netflix. It's Amazon's been picking up 2 or 3 different things. Ed Brubaker had a couple of his got picked up. It's in the works with some of these artists, but now it's like Amazon. Forget about the Disney and all the other machinery. It's like they're getting left behind. It's Amazon is the one that's kind of ramping up with some of the money to buy some of these stories, and even the crappy ones. Beach Planet, if you know what I'm saying. Kelly Sue. Yeah.
Are they developing that? Kelly Sue DeConnick, don't buy my comic books if you don't like my politics. Yeah.
Her husband, Matt Fraction's book. Yeah, they got an option on that. Yeah.
They did Paper Girls too, didn't they? Amazon recently. Yeah. Paper Girls. Yeah. I think that's oh my God, Brian K. Vaughan.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was okay.
Yeah, again, I'm not a huge fan. So the video I'm going to do is on Witches. Actually, by the time people are watching this, we probably already had my Witches video out. So they picked up Witches, and Witches is Scott Snyder.
Oh, really?
It's just so different. It's just so different. I can see why they want to adapt it. It's not one that I enjoyed. I will say it isn't really woke or anything like that. It's just odd and strange and that kind of thing. So, all right, well, that's cool. Millar World, is that how he calls everything? Millar World? I don't know what to call it. So Millar World.
Millar World. By the way, Pops, so this is going back years and years. The first time I was aware of Millar outside of 2000 AD, he was co-writing one of the reinventions of the Swamp Thing series with Grant Morrison. Now, this is going back years, yeah.
Oh, man,
so Grant Morrison, Mark Millar, they co-wrote a few issues together. Then I think Mark Millar took over, but yeah, that I don't know if you ever saw that. I can't remember the date, but it's a long, long time ago.
Sure. No, my first dose of Grant Morrison was actually on Doom Patrol. Animal Man and Doom Patrol and stuff like that back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And he wrote a really good little mini for 2000 AD called Zenith. That was quite cool. Kind of, a mixture of superhero and rock music. Because Grant Morrison's always wanted to be a rock star, hasn't he?
He's something. And he's such a fun, again, this is another reason why I've been very frustrated with some of like what I feel is almost like sellout of like some of the stuff he's done for DC. Because I was rereading New 52 Superman because I thought that's where they might pull from for the new movies and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I was rereading them, and none of the 3 Supermans are the same, by the way. For those of you who haven't seen any of my videos, it's like there's Justice League Superman, then there was Action Comics Superman, then there was Superman, and they're not the same character. They are so unrelated, it's insane. Justice League Superman seems like Superman, which was, and again, that first few issues that Jeff Johns wrote was supposed to be Justice League because it actually was Darkseid and the mother boxes, and it actually makes sense. If they just adapted that, they would have been fine. But Grant Morrison, his run just gets derailed. There's like this random President Obama issue that's just stuck in. It's all these random things that are. It's just I was like, this is Grant Morrison. Like, what happened? Like, I don't understand. Like he had sort of like a F you money attitude towards doing this. The stories are pretty legendary, of just like, I don't know. I don't care. Like that's how he's been. And then suddenly to have that happen, I thought it was just very strange. So
sounds like editorial, doesn't it? Editorial decision there.
Sounds exactly like this is what we're doing. Yeah, I agree. So, okay. So you just did a stream and I didn't catch all of it, but you were kind of back on plugging Zdarsky on Daredevil. And is this like the best thing that Marvel has to offer right now? And I have not read it. I know that this is the one thing that everyone has said about modern Daredevil is that Zdarsky's at least been good. Is that a brand new run still going, or is it rebooted, or where are we at on the Zdarsky Daredevil?
It's a weird one because he had a run started about, when was it? A couple of years ago, maybe 3, and he got to maybe issue 30, in the 30s anyway, and they rebooted it, Pops, for for no reason really. They rebooted it to get back to a number 1, so that happened last year, and now it's just come out. Issue 8 just came out, and that's the one that pulled me back in because I heard about the art. First of all, I was on one of the kind of shill comic book review sites called Comic Book Roundup, which is supposed to get different comic book reviews from different sites, just make an average score. And it was getting review bombed, Pops, by quite a few, or shall we say users, not the critics, but users were either giving it 1s or 2s out of 10. I was like, wait a minute, Daredevil, what's going on there? What's happened? So I had a look myself, and it's got really good art. It's got the Punisher. It's got Elektra as a kind of second Daredevil, and Daredevil as well. She's not replaced him. They're fighting together. And it just, a ninja army, and the art, mate. If I can share an image, I'll try and find one, but absolutely spellbinding, and it pulled me back in. But what I think it is, Pops, is there's a lot of people out there who just don't like Zdarsky, whether it's his politics, blah, blah, blah. Some people can't separate the art from the artist, so they just give him crappy scores.
Yeah, I don't have any patience for that. I think it's the worst approach you can have. It just you're basically being a shill in the reverse. Yeah. It's the exact same thing. You're not being honest. It's like, look, I if you want to have an aversion to someone because of their politics or their whatever, I totally get that. Mrs. Pops has been on me for years about some of that because she's definitely down that rabbit hole where she won't even go see certain movies or whatever because of that. However, I'm not going to bag on somebody's book or give someone a crappy movie score just because I don't like that person. I want to try to handle the two separately. So, okay, well that's interesting because this is part of the complexity that I have really found and have had a hard time explaining to people is how many reboots they've done. They just keep rebooting and restarting, and it creates so much confusion for the people who either want to get in or they want to read. You get things out of order. That's fascinating.
So we've got a very grizzled looking Matt Murdock. He's not gone old man Logan style. It's just gone, he was in prison for a while. He's not shaved. He looks rough and ready. But Marco Cicchetto's art, Pops, absolutely stunning, really good. This is an advertisement for next issue. So yeah, but I don't know why they rebooted it. Do you think is it part of the we've got a successful series. It's not selling like incredibly, but it's selling well. Okay, let's bring out a new number 1 and get even more sales. Like, what is the need? Why is there a need to do that? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm having a hard time with just the concepts of this rebooting process that they do, and why they would even. If you want to try it out and see if it would work or not, that's one thing. But the fact that you're still trying and it's proven to not really work. And it just creates these little bubbles of sales, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's all they care about. They're just chasing bubbles because nothing is maintained statistically. Oh man, look at that! Yeah, that's great.
It's awesome art. So who would rate this 1 out of 10? Just forget about the story. Even the art. The art deserves like a pretty high score on its own.
Well, you would also
well written.
It could be the worst story in the world, and you would go, I'm going to give it a 2 or a 3 because the art is so good. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations where, what I mean? Or the art is so good and the story, or vice versa. The story is great. The art is crap. It's like, all right, well, it's like a 5. You know what I mean? Like, I prefer story over art.
Sure. An average,
You know what I
an average 5 is fine.
Yeah,
it's
it's
fair.
like I don't-
5 out of 10, but 1 out of 10, you're like, come on, guys.
So that's just and this happens on IMDb with the movie scores because they call it the C, the C. So all these scores will be 10s and all these scores will be 1s. It's like it creates a C, and it messes up the scoring process. So. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I will not promise that I will get into Daredevil, but I will promise that I will consider it. I have a hard time jumping in on the reboots. I know you've talked about Alien as well a little bit, and same kind of problem. I'm like, well, should I kind of jump in? I want to jump in. They've started it again. I just don't know. I love Alien stuff so much. Like I'm an old school Dark Horse Comics. Dark Horse Presents number 24. I have 2 copies of Dark Horse number 24. I mean, this is yeah. I have original Alien.
Why?
Comics
What's so special about that one?
That's the original Origin.
Oh wow!
That's when
that's
the original. Oh, yeah. I don't have it handy. I would have to move 2 boxes to get to it in that box to
I used to see. I remember
them.
The old black and white Alien series from Dark Horse. Aliens, I should say.
Most of them were
back in the day.
Black and white in the beginning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember those. I wish I still have them.
So I still have a lot of those. I haven't decided what to do with a lot of them because they're not. And for anybody who doesn't remember or know, they were a lot of the bind covers are brightly colored, so there are no mint copies to be found easily. They're very difficult to find in good condition because the moment you read them, the spine gets those little white spine ticks on them. So mine have some white spine ticks, and that doesn't make it worthless. It just makes it just not very valuable, but find, and they're beautiful, and I enjoy them. I still have a lot of good, probably 30 or 40 issues of some of that old school. So let me share the screen. This image was actually a little small, so it didn't really blow up right here whenever I shared it.
There we go. Wow. Look at that. That's gorgeous. Is that the one you're saying? That's the first appearance of the alien?
The origin. Aliens? Yeah, it's the origin story. It's kind of like it really has become like where it's one of the real key issues to them having their story where everything else felt very movie. This is where it becomes kind of like, they're going to have their own little mini universe to kind of play in. And then I think right after that is when they did Earth War, the Earth War miniseries, which was a huge deal back in the day as well. So, but yeah, the original 6 parts, I have a ton of these books. I gave some of the Predator crossover ones to Loki because he's massively into some of that kind of stuff and loves Predator stuff. So we had a big bonding session over the AVP universe and how it's not really been done particularly great over the years. So
this is the cover. Look at this. This is the latest issue 6. Now, what pulled me into Alien is Philip Kennedy Johnson, who wrote a really good Superman Action Comics series. What was it? When Superman went to Warworld, it was a great story. So I want to check it out. Now, of course, that's the, that's just the cover. I'll show you the art inside. The art's not as good as that, unfortunately, but this is the style here. Where are we? There we go. So very different to the old Dark Horse Pops, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Details not there.
Yeah, I'm not enjoying that nearly as much as that cover. The cover is a trick, is a trap. It's a trap cover for me. Yeah,
it's a trap. Yeah, right.
Because that cover is beautiful. But yeah, this this interior art's just kind of like okay. I'm not saying it's horrible. It's just like okay. I will say at least it's interesting with the way that they're pacing things and they're changing their panel structures and color palettes. See, I don't like that at all. That color looks terrible. It looks so cartoony. That middle, the row of the 3 panels, that middle frame, like I don't even know what's happening in that panel. That's not something I would enjoy. Like, oh no, what is this? So
you were talking before, weren't you, about the pastel, the kind of thing for pastel colors these days?
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of the digital coloring? Do you think is that a problem we've got with that, or is it just depend on the colorist?
I assume it's the colorist because we don't get it consistently, right? So obviously you have someone like Jimenez. Jimenez doesn't do it, so there are people that there's people that color you know, and I think it has to do with styles. And I pull from that because back in the day with indie comics, and I used to joke about, you know, Berkeley Art School. I don't know what the freaking art schools are called, but Berkeley, California, the stereotypical art student. You know, they're the emo, sad, pathetic. Woe is me. I'm poor and I'm crying because no one wants to buy my comic book. And you open it up and it's all a bunch of pink and purples and girls talking about food. And I'm like,
Oh
those were
dear.
indie comic books back in the day. They've been around this whole time, but suddenly all of that's been merged into mainstream, and that's why I think people have objections. Like if Marvel was making indie stuff, that would be fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're not. You're transforming the whole universe to placate to that style and approach, and I think that's where things have derailed. And the reason they don't do it is because they won't sell. They're you know, we've seen this with the race swapping, gender swapping, name swap, and all that kind of stuff because they're just coattail writing things that have already been established and just putting this just basically. And then when you don't like it, then you're the problem. And I'm like, that's not how this works. But yeah, so you didn't sell me on Alien. I will say that the art of Daredevil, that was pretty cool. I have to be honest, that was pretty cool. I don't know about the Daredevil that I'll get to, but I will tell you that I'll bump some of the Mark Millar stuff, especially if they're miniseries. That's a great idea. If they're short like that, that's a great way to do a quick read through, pop out a video and talk about it and share with somebody something that's good like that. Because I've heard you talk about King of Spies. I don't think I wrote it down. So this time I did, so I can try to track that down.
Yeah, seriously, huge recommend if you've got any interest in the kind of Bond style character. You know, really, really good.
Oh, I love all of that stuff. All that cat and mouse type stuff is always the spy genre stuff's great. So I probably need to go back and read some more Crow. I did a video on the first appearance of Crow, which is Caliber Presents #1. It's extremely rare comic book. It's only 7 pages of Crow, but I'm like, oh man, I have the digital, and I'm like, I mean, I haven't seen this. I haven't owned this book since the 90s. Whenever I sold that book. Because now it's hundreds of dollars if you can find it, and then of course they're graded into the thousands because it's kind of like the Alien book. It's all of that dark color, so the moment anything's red, it turns white. They get these stress marks on them. So I think I wanted to continue because I wanted to kind of really keep diving into some of these other characters of where they came from. I wanted to do something maybe with turtles. I wanted to do something with turtles for sure. Because I think there's a place for the good stuff that's not just the capes and tights and stuff like that too. So yeah.
Can I ask you, Pops? You got me curious now talking about turtles. Have you ever read or ever been a fan of Usagi Yojimbo by Stan Sakai?
I did back in the day for sure.
Okay.
I have not read that in forever. I loved all of that. I kind of went down that rabbit again. I hate sounding like a freaking repeat record. But Frank Miller did that Ronin book.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the Ronin book took me down a rabbit hole. That's how I found other stuff. Because I was like, oh, wait, what is this? Oh, wait, what is this? And I hate sounding like a broken record and I'm repeating myself with what Miller did. But it's because he had some of these things. Because I didn't find his Daredevil directly. I found Elektra Assassin. So... Again, the story goes, I went and bought graphic novels. I bought Dark Knight Returns and Year One, and I loved them. So what else has he wrote? They had Elektra Assassin, which took me to his Daredevil. And it's like, well, what else did he write? And meanwhile, my friends are also recommending, like, I got down the Crisis of Infinite Earth side, and that's how this is kind of how it all started moving forward for me.
Okay.
And then I went back to my childhood where I was reading Avengers. So I went back and got a couple of these key issues that I remembered and kind of read them kind of both backwards and forward, like went like that with them. And that took me in the Marvel side of things. But when I read Ronin, I was like, oh, this is really fun. I had a good time with it. And there's only one shop that was in our area that had the turtle books, and they were up on the wall. So a lot of them were out of my price range until they got more popular. But I was able to get Usagi Yojimbo. There was a couple others that were like that, and I got to read a few. I won't say that I bought like the whole runs or anything like that, or bought a ton of them, but I did enjoy what I read, and I also enjoyed like the comedy stuff. Like I don't know how I ended up down that connection. Maybe it's because I'm looking at a martial arts rabbit, but it was like Gru. I enjoyed reading Gru.
Yes, big Gru fan here. I think that's
Yeah.
how I first found out about Stan Sakai, because he was a letterer on Gru, and they talk about each other's work. So I found Usagi Yojimbo through Gru.
Okay. Yeah. Sergio's such a fun artist, fun
Aragones,
creator.
genius.
Just so much fun. Gru was a huge thing. I enjoyed Gru. And with Turtles, I ended up with the New England Comics thing. So there's one called Paul the Samurai, and I remember reading Paul the
Oh,
Samurai. It's like
don't
Tick.
know that one.
Well, Tick and Paul the
Yeah.
Samurai were like these comedic elements, and I enjoyed reading those as well. So, yeah, no. So again, it's rabbit hole type stuff, right? You end up down things like, what else can I find? What else can I find? I think that's why the Millar world will be an interesting topic to kind of dive deep. And I won't say that I will. I'm actually more interested, now that you've talked about the Daredevil thing, to go back and maybe read the 30 issue run that he had before that you also liked.
I would, if you can, I'd start with that, because that was really good. I thought maybe not the whole run, but a lot of it was. A lot of it was really high quality. So yeah, start with that. Don't jump in on the latest one, because you'll miss too much, Pops. I don't know. Are you more into that? Are you more of a kind of completionist? You don't want to just jump in the run right now. You want to start from the beginning and see how it developed.
I want a place that I can jump in. Right. I don't, it doesn't have to be like, so for me, like you brought up Batman 130 and you had explained it in your video enough that I knew, okay, I can jump in there because I have a new writer, a new story, whatever. I didn't need to read 129 issues to get to that point. So that was that's okay. So I need to have a place, an entry point. I don't need to necessarily have. I will be a completist if I'm enjoying myself. I'm not going to be a completist if I will easily bail out on you if you're if they're changed. I mean, I have read a lot of the new Marvel, and I have not read all of. I mean, there's a ton of things that it will. If my app had a complete history, it would have all of these things that I have dabbled in and not read any more of. Tons
That's
and
what I
tons
used to do. Yeah.
Like
With the Marvel, the Unlimited, is it? Marvel Unlimited app. It's great. You got to admit, it's fantastic, but there's almost too much choice. There's too much to go into. So, as you say, like you, I was dipping and diving and trying bits and bobs, trying some things, and some of the things I wanted weren't on there. So,
yeah, the kids had gotten it for me. That's kind of what kicked off this part with the Pops thing. With it would be easier to revisit my comic book love by having that app, because it would be a way to digitally. Because when I have a floppy, I'm like, what am I going to do? I have to set up a whole different camera system and share the pages. And I've been dabbling with that. I got a second webcam. It is a major hassle
it's
to
so
do
difficult,
all
Pops.
of that.
I tried it with my webcam, with my phone as well. It's
Yeah.
I wish I could do it, but I can't do it easily and can't do it well with the physical copies. So digital's quite easy for that, isn't it?
Yeah, especially because you're battling with not only your camera and the lighting.
The lighting,
where is it? You can see yourself. You're casting shadows. It
reflections from the page.
And the books are not the same. So you have like a glossy comic book, and all it is this white reflection, and you're like,
oh, the perils of a YouTuber.
I know. Yeah, I know. I thought we have such first world problems of being a comic book YouTuber.
But we just want to share the love. We want to share. This looks amazing. I wish you could see it. How I see it, and trying to share that. That's all it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I had bought, they had like a discount store, and it had like 5 floppies in it and whatever. And I opened them up on the show, and I was like, well, I'll do the. I can never get it. I was like, it'd just be easier just to pull them up digitally and share it with you. That I got guys that way. And I have to be honest, even then, you guys can see how it looks. I'm always trying to, crop it and tweak it, try to make it bigger, try to make it move a little bit, try to do things that at least make it a little more engaging to give it the life that it deserves, instead of just being dead on a table with a terrible light. I don't know. So, yeah, you do a really good job when you're doing your read-throughs. How do you edit all that? How do you do all that?
Oh yeah, it takes a while. It will take between 3 and 4 hours from start to finish. So I'll start off taking screen caps of the pages, and then I'll go through it and kind of try not to read the story, but try and summarize it in my own words. Put the voices on sometimes, I'm Batman, things like that, crazy stuff like that, and then edit it. And it takes ages, Pops, as you know. Edit it and put some music in the background, and then get it on, get it uploaded. But I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, does anyone really care about these reviews? Maybe they just watch the first like 1 minute of the review, me saying, yeah, this is really good, go and get it, and then they switch off. They don't even watch the story summary.
I'm sure there's a percentage that does that, and there's a percentage that just wants to watch more. And I wish I could say that I'm going to go through that much work for it. And maybe at some point, if I had an editor or someone to help me move the ball along to do that. I did come up with a couple of strategies to do some of the screenshots and then meld them together and then kind of do the little, it's very generic animation because I don't want to deal with the tech problems of trying to make it more complicated. So at least it'll move in, it'll move back, it'll move sideways or something like that. So they kind of thread together. So that's what I did on that Spawn one. I just kind of grabbed a bunch of screenshots, threw them together, talked about it. Didn't read a lot. So that seems to work pretty well for me. But I'm with you. I don't know I don't know the best way to do it to balance like a cost benefit. Right. You know what I mean? To spend 4 hours on a 10-minute video that 100 people might watch. And out of 100 people, 50 of them watched a minute or less. I'm like, so I got 50 people who may like, so I don't know. It's cost benefit. And I hate for people to have to hear that. But that's when your time is the most valuable asset you have. That's kind of the challenge for now. So
absolutely.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about some of the. So, what is some of the other? Because you have had some positive words from time to time to say about some things like Flash and World's Finest and things like that. Any of those kinds of things that you kind of recommend? I mean, maybe not totally up to date, but at least recently.
I just jumped back in. Jumped back in. I started Flash for the first time because I had different friends, comic book friends, saying the current run has been really good, Pops. It's by a writer called Jeremy Adams, and he's been like writing very colourful, popular, like hopeful, family-oriented Flash stories. You know, proper superhero stories with a good focus on family. Remember families? You know, normal in quotes families. Yeah, so. It's worth looking. He's just started, what is it called? 1 Minute War. It's a kind of story arc, just began about 2 issues ago. So it's worth checking out. But I don't know because I don't know the character. Have you ever been into Flash, really? Do you ever get into the character before?
Not really. And actually, I probably should take even more heat for my criticism of Flash sometimes when I'm talking about like a Justice League product or something like that because he's played sort of all over the map. Like Flash will be very serious, and he's a scientist, and he's this, and then you have like joke Flash, and he's flirting with the girls. Then with Green Lantern, it's like him and Green Lantern back and forth, and you're like, well, which one's the flirty one? Which one's the comic relief one? Which one's the serious one? Like I don't, and maybe it's because it is inconsistent. But again, I think that what you're saying was what I heard too. It was like, I've heard good things. It sounds like there's an entry point, like we were talking about a minute ago. It's like, okay, when does Adam start on the book? Maybe that's where I could hop in, give it a fair shake, see if it's a good run or not, share that with people and let people know. Yeah. I've heard the same thing about World's Finest, that it's kind of a pretty good run. I'm a couple issues in. I've thought it's been okay so far. It hasn't knocked my socks off. Wade does know how to write Batman, Superman together pretty well, so it's fine. Yeah.
I agree. I'm enjoying it very much, World Finest, because surprisingly, it's by Mark Waid, who, you know, some people just won't read him because of what he's done in the past, how he's treated people, not just fans or the creators, but for some reason, that series has been great, and it's helped by Dan Mora's art. Dan Mora is doing the art on
the
that.
art's fantastic.
When you see Superman, Batman, they look so good, don't they? It's like, oh, this is almost like, not golden age, what's the word? Just classic look of the characters.
Yeah, it made it again. It's the Jorge Jimenez, Dan Mora. It's like this is the Justice League. This is the look of how these characters are supposed to look in your universe, not just in your one comic book, in the universe. And if they can't draw it this way, they shouldn't be drawing it. You know, you can do an Elseworlds, you can do something else on your own if you want to, but you have to have a core brand and look that you're selling. And I think this is the problem with the comic books, that they don't have a bigger picture strategy that the editors, everyone too. It's just, you know, there should be pushback to say, no, I don't like this. This doesn't look right. So, all right, so let's take a look at the World's Finest here.
This is the next issue, which is out, I think, either next week or the week after, issue 12. Just give you an idea of the style. You know, it is classic, colourful comic book style, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually, the earlier issues even looked even more classic than that. Like Robin looks a little modern in the face there, a little bit too much. But the earlier issues definitely had even a more classic feel. I always go back to, like, I make these generic references to the 90s of just that kind of thing. So yeah. I haven't got far. I need to at least read the story arc and do a video or something, like tell everyone about this, because that's and I will say this, Gray. I don't know if you run into this with people that are on your channel and things like that or not, but people are a lot more into trade paperbacks and graphic novels than I am or ever was. They really want to know that this one's the one they should go buy. You know what I mean? From the trade paperback level.
Me too. Yeah. I don't know. You were saying earlier, Pops, you kind of started with graphic novels, but I'm sure
I know
you used to collect floppies, didn't you, when you were a kid? Did you get into comics when you were young?
Oh yeah. Oh, when I started. So when I was a little kid, I have one left right here.
What do you have? What's that? Let's have a look.
This is the only comic that has survived since Little Pops. So we moved when I was 8, so it's before that. So it's probably between the ages of like 4 and 8. This is it is a Hulk reprint. I don't even know. It's Marvel Superheroes, and it doesn't have a cover because Little Pops. That's from Little Pops' childhood. No cover.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Just that splash page. How awesome does it look?
I know. Isn't it fun? So,
oh man, that's great.
So yeah, from me as a kid, this is the only one that survived. But like I said, my gateway drug was graphic novels. But that's how I ended up wanting to get into floppies and actual collecting, because I went to a comic book store. When they went to a comic book store back then, they weren't pushing graphic novels; they were pushing actual comic books. So that was how that worked. So it was sure, yes, I started with Dark Knight Returns and Year One, Killing Joke, Elektra Assassin. I did all of these different things, but once I got to Millar Daredevil, there was no Millar Daredevil graphic novel to go get. I had to go buy floppies. Right. Whenever I wanted to find out what happened after Batman Year One, I had to navigate through that. So, for those of you who don't know at home, Matt's yeah. Okay. So, Gray has stuff going on in the background, so that's what's happening, and we can take a break.
She came down to just reheat some food. It'd be like 2 minutes. That's all. Sorry about that.
We're fine. We'll just take a little break. We can edit it out. We'll just edit it out. We'll edit it around me showing the comic book off.
Okay, go for it. We're fine. Go for it.
Of course.
Pause. That was so cool. Seeing that Avengers, Pops. That was amazing. With the Hulk and the cover, not the cover, so the inside page.
Yeah, that's the. There's just no cover. The cover was ripped off. So when I found this, I threw it a bag and a board, and I just kind of kept it moving around. I actually panicked whenever I had started bringing stuff down here. I couldn't figure it out where I put it, and I kind of had a little mini panic attack. That's why I put it up here. So I've showed it off now. Now it's like 3 or 4 times I've showed it off. So. I don't think I've ever shown you two. I have this Spawn. Cool. I showed it again last night on a Pacific 404 at a collector stream. This is a Spawn #1. But it's polybagged.
Wow.
So this was available in it's called Bookland. So this was like one of those mall bookstores and stuff. So part of this big Spawn explosion also involved them putting them out into like different stores, but it was different than retail. It was just a different thing anyway. So when I had my little flea market comic book store back in the day, some guy came in with a whole box of these things, and I bought a bunch of them. So I kept one back for myself. So yeah, I have all these weird oddities that I've kept, and so I don't misplace where I put them. I've put them back here on my little shelf.
Did you say you used to have a flea market comic book store?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what
I didn't realize.
I did. So yeah, during the '90s boom of all that stuff, I couldn't afford a store. I was a college student. So my parents had done like a flea market booth, and they wanted to put one down where I went to school. There was this massive flea market there. So we kind of partnered where as long as I would work their stuff too, I could have my own space. So I ended up doing comic books and cards and all that kind of stuff. I did it for about 3 years. I had a blast. It was probably longer than 3 years. Tons of stuff. It's fun. So, and this is one I want to show you too, because you're such a Sandman dude. This is my my autographed Sandman 50.
Oh, you got it signed. Ah, nice.
Yeah, it's a limited one that Neil signed.
Neil Gaiman, you sell out. You sell out.
Yeah.
Not you, Pops. Neil Gaiman. Never forgive him for what he did to the Netflix series.
I can't watch it. I bailed out. I couldn't watch it. I couldn't keep going. I know Joker Voice has been giving me grief about going and back and watching it. He says it's good or whatever. And I said, dude, I'm already having problems and I haven't even gotten to the race swap yet.
Good.
He liked it, but he's not a comic book guy, right? So he's not a comic book guy. And it's like, see, the thing is if it's not a character that you're attached to, you don't care when they mess it all up and they change it. So I think that's the problem. All right, great.
I've got one more, Pops.
What's that?
Is it okay? I've got one more to recommend. You know, we talked
Let's
about Sean Lewis. Sean Lewis,
Yes.
the writer of King Spawn.
Yes.
This is an indie title. It's called Above Snakes. Pretty cool. It's I'm halfway through it. I'll show you some of the art. It's kind of very indie style, but very colourful. Very what's the word? What would you say? Independent, I guess.
I'm going to try to make it full screen so I can kind of have a better judgment. Yeah, that's more like the
awesome,
indie style art that you would expect.
It's a kind of weird Deadwood style western, and it's hard to describe. It's really weird, but it's got western tropes, a story of American vengeance that explores where our rage can take us. But it's very good writing. It's funny. It's really funny, Pops. That's one of the things I like about it. You know, we need more funny stories, don't we? Simple as that.
We need to have some humor and laughs and comedy and stuff. So, okay.
So this just finished. It just came out on paperback. I recommend it. Give it a try. See what you think. But that's what I want to ask you. Do you read much indie stuff these days? Was it mainly Marvel and DC?
So like my, this phase of pop stuff was birthed out of the fact that I had access to the Marvel and the DC app now. And so it's like, that's where it kind of started. But now I've kind of been able to do this long enough now. And then because of members like you, I've been able to diversify enough to have a little better access to other content as well. Hence the Spawn stuff. Right. So I've been able to get into some other stuff. So I am not and I'm not above trying. I actually, that's the reason why I did like the first appearance of Crow review or whatever, just to find some of those obscure ones. Obviously I'm going to be drawn a lot to that older stuff like that, the older indie type stuff than I would the newer indie stuff, but I wouldn't be like the Mark Millar stuff or things like that. I'm definitely open to tracking it down, giving it a fair shake. I enjoy I did a little stream here, with Megan. We're going to talk about anti-steampunk western, which is our good friends James and Tom did put together there. So we'll talk about that.
Ginger Ninja, yeah.
So we'll talk about Comicsgate stuff from time to time. I gotta be honest, man. It's just the time factor. It's like you're just constantly trying to balance the amount of things that are in your head that you're wanting to kind of talk about with the amount of time that you have. And then trying to present that in a digestible way to all of the people that are out there viewing and listening and watching. So, but I appreciate the recommendations. That's why we do the comic talk. It's kind of like a little bit of a break. Kicks off Comic Book Wednesdays for me. Usually I do 1 or 2 comic book review videos in some way, shape, or form that day, or maybe a big comic book story of that day or something like that on Wednesdays. And I'm not saying there isn't comic book content that I do other days, but I try to make sure Wednesday's special. I'll try to make Wednesday a little more special by doing this. And I appreciate Gray connecting with us from around the globe here, across the pond. Yeah, pond. So yeah, he's in the future and he's come back in time to talk to us about comic books, and we greatly appreciate it. Some great recommendations and conversations about stuff. So, but with that, we'll kind of wrap up and say thanks to Gray, and all the stuff is down below. Gray, do you have sort of like a set schedule of doing certain streams or anything like that, or video drops, or how does your schedule kind of playing out these days?
At the moment, I try to get a new comic book review out on Tuesday and then either Wednesday or Thursday. So maybe 2 a week and midweek. And then I've got a movie review stream late on Friday night American time that starts at 11 p.m. Central. So it's actually midnight Eastern. And we do all sorts of things, Pops. The last one we did was Akira, the animated movie. So yeah, thanks for that. And thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast. I love talking comics, as you can tell, the same as you. I could talk comics, for hours and hours just going for it. So yeah, it's been so much fun.
I agree. Thank you so much, folks. Make sure that you make tomorrow better than today. Be blessed. Talk hard. Thank you so much for watching. I am Pops. All right. Let me stop.